What makes The Sound of Music a film that you should watch in the year 2020? Is it the curtain close, sinful nuns, children who grow at remarkably proportionate heights? To answer that question, I'm going to argue that The Sound of Music exemplifies a film that is greater than the sum of its parts. Through its charming soundtrack, striking scenery, and lively performances, its portrayal of the hardships of coping with changing national identity is relevant not only in the World War II era in which it is set, but still to this day. But before we begin our analysis of the film itself, a synopsis of the state of German-Austrian affairs leading up to 1937, when The Sound of Music is set, in less than 60 seconds. Germany and Austria have a complicated relationship. Recall until 1871, when what we now know as Germany became a unified nation, the whole region had been engulfed in a power struggle. What has two thumbs and hates a decentralized, ununified German confederation? Close, it's this guy, Otto von Bismarck, a Prussian and later German politician who, by relying on realpolitik and balance of power diplomacy, played a significant role in causing Central Europe to go from looking something like this to something like this. A series of treaties in the early 20th century post-World War I, including the Treaty of Saint-Germain and the Treaty of Versailles, kept Austria and Germany apart for decades because of the geopolitical threat that such a strong, centralized power in Europe would pose to countries in both Western Europe, like France, and Eastern Europe, like the Soviet Union. To add a further wrinkle, recall that Adolf Hitler himself was born in and spent a considerable amount of his life in Austria. Historians have often referred to the German occupation of Austria on March 12, 1938 as the Anschluss, which when translated means joinder, connection, or unification. But many historians argue it's more accurate to describe the events of March 12th and onward as an annexation, which implies less of a willing joinder of the two nations and instead the unwilling occupation and domination of one power by another. So a few questions should linger as we as an audience contemplate what the filmmakers describe as the Austrian Golden Age really means. In the year 1937, what exactly is Austrian identity? To what degree is it bound up in German identity, and Nazi German identity at that? To try and parse out the filmmaker's answer to those questions, I'm going to unpack The Sound of Music according to the three-act structure. During Act 1 of The Sound of Music, our protagonist, Maria, or rather, Sister Maria's, world is turned upside down when she gets herself booted from the Abbey for spending too much time frolicking in the Austrian hills and eating, and too little time doing the important nun stuff.
Maria's not an asset to the Abbey.
Act 1 is set to a musical score that I would describe as bouncy and uplifting, and features a backdrop of gorgeous shots of Austrian nature and montages of the historic city of Salzburg. During the performance of The Hills Are Alive, the audience sees a picture of a woman living her best life. The lyrics establish that songs like the one she is singing have been sung for 1,000 years, reinforcing that the Austria we are stepping into is one steeped in tradition, and the sweeping and epic musical score mirrors the surrounding landscape. In this scene, we also don't have any explicit clues that Maria is a nun, and that may be because, in her mind, in this moment, she's trying to forget that she is one. The lyrics reinforce her desire to live a life marked by freedom, and to her, nature represents that freedom. Her body language in this scene also exudes youthfulness. She's running, spinning, hopping, and just generally playful. Like a child, she seems to not have a care in the world. One interpretation of this scene is that it helps establish the protagonist as a young person who does not have the same responsibilities and emotional burdens as a grown adult. Let's return to this shot and take a closer look. The cityscape is cast in a golden light. The backdrop looks like a town that, without close examination, could very well be a picture of Salzburg decades, if not centuries, before the 30s, when we're told this film is set. Again, the filmmakers are trying to paint a picture of Austria that resembles a sort of old-timey Austria, or at least a 1960s Hollywood exec's version of that Austria. But what's most important is that this Austria seems warm, charming, and storied, and shots like this help establish that. Next, we hear operatic voices singing hymns in Latin, just as nuns would have performed these hymns centuries before the film is set. Again, it seems like filmmakers are trying to convey a sense that life in Salzburg is a lot like it was a long, long time ago.
How do you solve a problem like Maria? How do you catch a cloud and pin it down? How do you find a word that means Maria? A flibbity-gibbet, a will-o'-the-wisp, a clown.
The most important takeaway from this song in terms of advancing the film's narrative is that it helps establish that while Maria has plenty of human foibles, the Abbey cannot expect perfection from her because, after all, she's a girl and she still has lots of growing up to do.
How do you hold a moonbeam in your hand?
And with that, Maria packs her bags and hightails it for the Von Trapp family home. Or Compound. During the montage when Maria performs I Have Confidence, there is a shot of Maria taking a bus, a somewhat rare display of characters in this film interacting with modernity, but still, the window reflection displays a gorgeous mountain lake, once again celebrating the natural beauty of Austria. Julie Andrews is brimming with energy as she performs this song, underscoring her character's youth and liveliness. During Act 2, the narrative shifts its focus to how Maria undergoes significant personal growth through imparting, among other things, Austrian identity onto a new generation, and how the window for capturing that Austrian identity is quickly closing. The musical numbers in this act lean heavily on explicit and implicit references to Austrian identity, unlike the first act where music focuses predominantly on establishing the mindset of Maria's character.
Your life, little girl, is an empty page that men will want to write on.
To write on.
16 Going on 17, a performance that I would argue is the closest this film comes to self-parody, is pivotal nevertheless because the dialogue leading up to the performance introduces the foreboding political turmoil that faces Austria and the Von Trapp family. This scene also introduces the character of Liesel as a foil to Maria. Liesel's naivete is emphasized when she dismisses the looming threat of Nazism. During the song Do Re Mi, Maria refamiliarizes the children with the charming city of Salzburg. We get the impression that they haven't spent too much time outside the compound as of late, and they dance through the mountains, which again reinforces the theme of the cathartic power of nature. I've seen a stage production of The Sound of Music, and while it was lovely, the fact that it lacked the stunning backdrop of pre-war Salzburg and the Alps makes a good case for why some things are just better seen on film. Lonely Goatherd is definitely not one of the songs that you'll hear on your typical American Christmas CD, and perhaps that's in part because it's very much not intended to code as American. The filmmakers are trying to portray something that is uniquely Austrian. Max proposes entering the children into not just a festival, but a folk festival. Max knows that the captain, who values Austrian tradition deeply, will be more inclined to allow them to enter if it's a folk festival, unlike Max, who openly admits he's just in it for the money. Tensions between the two come to a head when the captain confronts him about the urgency of the political situation that they're facing.
Heil Hitler!
Oh, Georg, he's just a boy.
Yes, and I'm just an Austrian.
What's going to happen's going to happen. Just make sure it doesn't happen to you.
Max, don't you ever say that again. You must help it.
The character of Max could be interpreted as a foil to the captain. The captain forgoes enhancing his wealth by marrying the Baroness, whereas Max has a one-track mind and wants him to marry the Baroness for precisely that reason. Similarly, the captain forgoes enhancing his power by taking a position in the Nazi Navy, whereas Max takes advantage of others, in this case the children's singing abilities, if it will result in increasing his own wealth. Like Lonely Goatherd, the song Edelweiss is intended to code as a traditionally Austrian.
Edelweiss, every morning you greet me.
Captain sings this song with his daughter Liesel, singing back the same lyrics, implying that it's a song already passed down through generations. The party that the captain throws for the Baroness can be read as sort of a last hurrah for the Austrian Golden Age. Horse-drawn carriages drop off guests, men and women are dressed to the nines in attire that, without closer examination, looks similar to what would have been worn at such an occasion a century earlier. An Austrian flag is draped from the ceiling in what the Nazi butler describes as an opulent display, and the music that's played includes an orchestral version of Edelweiss and the Linder, an Austrian folk dance that Maria, like the good steward of Austrian identity that she is, teaches the children.
Now you bow and I curtsy. Like this? Fine. Now we go for a little walk. This way. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Step together. Now, step, hop.
And when the captain and Maria start to dance the Linder together, it marks one of the first times that they see each other in a notably different light. Unlike Baroness Schrader, a wealthy, modern woman from the more metropolitan Vienna, Maria is a
Your
poor,
face is all right,
titleless
is
woman
it?
from the countryside of Salzburg.
I don't suppose I'm used to dancing.
So Long Farewell is a song that foreshadows the Von Trapp's departure from Austria. More so than a goodbye to the guests for the night, it is a farewell to the Austria they once knew. If the film were to end at the end of Act 2, in many ways it could read as a coming-of-age piece. The protagonist, Maria, undergoes personal growth and emerges more confident and self-assured in her identity. And like so many films from this era with a female protagonist, they end when she gets married. But The Sound of Music does not, in fact, end at Act 2. The audience realizes that the central conflict of what has till this point been a borderline saccharine film is not whether or not a bad nun will open herself up to realizing God's true will for her. It's whether a nation can overcome the loss of its homeland. Almost the entirety of Act 3 takes place at night, and this darkness could be interpreted as a metaphor for the sun having set on the golden days of Austria. And unlike Acts 1 and 2, the music is much more somber, with the notable exception of the Climb Every Mountain reprise in the final scene.
Weiler. Heil Hitler.
Oh, good afternoon, Herr Zeller.
Perhaps you've not heard. I'm now the Gauleiter. Heil Hitler.
Heil Hitler.
I have just come from the house of Captain Von Trapp. Incidentally, the only one in the neighborhood not flying the flag of the Third Reich since the Anschluss, but we have dealt with that situation.
Turns out the captain was right, no such thing as not being political. The folk festival presents a subtle but unequivocal sign that someday Austrian identity may in fact triumph over Nazism after all.
You look happy to meet me, blossom of snow, may you bloom and grow forever. Edelweiss, bless my homeland forever.
And when the entire audience joins in to sing Edelweiss, the song is transformed into somewhat of an anthem to the Austria they once knew, an Austria that will be forever changed.
Small and white, clean and bright, you look happy to meet me. Blossom of snow, may you bloom and grow
I would argue that the crisis point in The Sound of Music is when the Von Trapp family comes face to face with Nazis in their attempt to escape, and the particular Nazi that they confront is none other than Rolf, a boy who thinks he is a man and chooses to align himself with a movement that, in his view, will cement his transition to manhood. In reality, that choice just underscores the profound lack of wisdom he actually possesses. But fortunately, because the nuns do what they do best, living out the will of God, the Von Trapp family manages to escape unscathed. Julie Andrews, a stunning backdrop, and the moving Rodgers and Hammerstein score combined to make this an epic story that has just as much to say about the current world we're living in as it did about Austria in 1938 or America 55 years ago when it was released. The final scene of The Sound of Music is a reprise of the song Climb Every Mountain. It's daylight again as the Von Trapp family leaves Austria behind, their journey made possible because of the Austrian landscapes that are venerated throughout the course of the film. A chorus of angelic-sounding opera in the background delivers a command to the Von Trapp family and viewers alike to climb every mountain till you find your dream, and strings punctuate every word. While the Von Trapp family can be seen living this out literally as they climb up a mountain, their journey is far from over, and surely they will have to reflect on this creed as they build a new life for themselves in Switzerland. In the face of unparalleled fear and danger, opening yourself up to loving and accepting the love of others can give you the courage it takes to do what's right. And it's often in times of profound uncertainty that we realize the dreams we are meant to pursue and the people we must strive to become.